There's a fine line between love and obsession, and Carl Tanzler tiptoed over that line. Actually, he didn't just tiptoe, he stepped over that line and ran. So who exactly was Carl Tanzler? Well, let's get into the story. Carl was born in 1877 in Germany, and in his early 40s, he married and had 2 children. In 1926, he decided to move his entire family to a town just outside of Tampa. A few years after moving his entire family, he decided to abandon them and move to Key West, where he started working as a radiologic technician. While in Key West, this is where he decided to change his name to Count Carl. At his new job, Carl found out that a 22-year-old Cuban-American woman named Maria Elena, otherwise known as Elena, was being treated there for tuberculosis. As soon as he saw her, he became immediately infatuated with this woman. As a child, he claimed that he had visions of family members showing him his one true love. And so these visions allegedly were of this gorgeous dark-featured woman that strongly resembled Elena, and so as soon as he saw her, in his mind, this was the woman he had been waiting for his entire life. Now, at the time, tuberculosis was a terminal diagnosis, and Carl was devastated that the love of his life was going to be taken from him so soon. So what did Carl do? Even though he didn't have the credentials to do so, he began treating Elena like he was a doctor. He was so determined to save this woman that he started treating her in her Key West home by making homemade medicines, tinctures, tonics, just to try and save her so they can live together like in his fantasies. While doing all of this, Carl became very close with Elena's family, and it's relatively unknown if they knew of his romantic intent or if they thought he was an actual doctor. Now, this entire time, Elena knew what Carl was trying to do, but she just wasn't interested. Carl constantly professed his love for her, and he showered her with gifts, but Elena just did not feel the same way of this 50-something-year-old man. Despite trying to create some sort of healing elixir, Elena passed on October 25th, 1931. Even after passing, Carl was still wildly obsessed with this woman, and he offered her family to spend this incredible amount of money to make a custom mausoleum in the Key West Cemetery. There was one catch though, and that catch was he was to be the only one with the key to the mausoleum. For 2 whole years, Carl visited Elena's grave every single night, but one night in 1933, he suddenly stopped showing up. This caught the family by surprise and raised some suspicion because at this point they knew Carl was in love with their daughter. When he stopped showing up, they thought maybe he had lost interest in his love for Elena. That wasn't the case though. In fact, the reason why Carl stopped showing up was because he eliminated the need to visit Elena every single night. Now, how did he do that? During the 2 years that Carl was visiting Elena's grave, he spent that entire time constructing a laboratory inside an old airplane. So, why did Carl need this makeshift laboratory inside an old airplane? It was because he actually removed Elena's body with a toy wagon and took her all the way to that makeshift laboratory. The reason why Carl wanted to be the only one with the key to the building was because he wanted to make sure that no one knew she was missing. Now, what exactly was in this makeshift laboratory inside this old airplane? They were actually supplies where he could try and slow her body's decomposition. He used silk covered in mortician's wax and paper mache to keep Elena's face looking as normal as he possibly could. He stuffed her torso with rags to keep it shapely, and even gave her glass eyes because her own decomposed before he was able to retrieve her body. To finish trying to preserve her body, he rammed wire coat hangers into her limbs as makeshift bones to maintain her body's structure. Now, to keep the smell of a body away from the outside of his makeshift laboratory, Carl covered her body in flowers, perfumes, disinfectants, and over time though, her scalp began to rot, and so he constructed a wig for her he made from her own hair that he received from Elena's mother. After doing all of this, Carl's attempt at saving the love of his life was complete. And for the next 7 years, Carl slept in the same bed next to Elena's dead, rotting body. Over these 7 years, though, people began to become suspicious of Carl and his behavior. He would constantly walk into boutiques to buy women's clothes and jewelry, despite the fact that he was never actually seen with a woman. Now, by this time, the entire town knew of Carl's strange behavior and what he tried to do to save Elena. Eventually, a boy cycling past Carl's remote home saw him dancing with what he thought was a life-size doll, and rumors of his strange behavior reached Elena's family. This led to Elena's sister to drop in on Carl to see what was going on, and when she arrived, she saw this life-size doll in Carl's home, and she found it unsettling, but didn't think she could actually be looking at her sister, who had been dead for 7 years. So when Elena's sister left, she alerted the police because she was face to face with her dead sister. So when the police arrived at Carl's home, they found the doll that her sister and the boy riding by had mentioned. After some tests, they concluded that it was in fact Elena's body. Among all other alterations to her body that I mentioned before, one of the most disturbing aspects of this, besides the entire act itself, police found a cardboard tube placed in her groin as a makeshift vagina. Investigators said they couldn't determine whether Carl had used it for sexual gratification or just for structural integrity. Although this was the 40s, so releasing this depraved detail could have been too shocking for the public. After the discovery, Carl Tanzler was arrested for grave robbing. Disturbing details came out during the trial. Carl swore that Elena's spirit would visit him every single night while he sat next to her body in the mausoleum. He said that she told him to take her from her resting place so she could live with him. He also said that he had plans to build an airship to take Elena high into the stratosphere so that radiation from outer space could penetrate her tissues and restore her life so they could live happily ever after. Disturbingly, after the trial, Carl Tanzler was allowed to go free without facing any consequences of his horrific actions to Elena's body. Now, after Carl was let go, everyone thought that was finally going to be the end of it, but the horror continued. Elena's body was actually put on display for everyone who had heard of this morbid case and what he had done to her body. She was shown at a funeral home, and 7,000 people came to see her before she was finally put to her resting place in an unmarked grave. In 1952, Carl Tanzler died alone in his home.